Trump turns an Iowa rally into a venting session. President Trump said on Wednesday that he was crafting legislation to bar new immigrants from receiving welfare for at least 5 years. He announced the proposal in a Conquering Hero Returns speech in Iowa, his first trip back to the political battleground state since he won it in the 2016 general election. His mood buoyant after twin Republican wins in congressional special elections the night before, the president also revealed his anticipated plan for putting solar panels on a proposed wall on the Mexican border, an idea he boasted he had come up with himself. And he mostly managed to avoid raising the topic he struggles to stop talking about, the investigations of Russian meddling in the 2016 election and possible collusion with his campaign. "They have phony witch hunts going against me," Mr. Trump said nearly an hour into a speech that veered off script repeatedly. "All we do is win, win, win. We won last night." The rally, Mr. Trump's first since the end of April, served as a venting session for a pent-up president who has stewed and brooded from inside the gilded cage of the White House over attacks from investigators, Democrats, and the news media, his interview schedule drastically pared down and his aides imploring him to stay off Twitter. Style heavy and substance light, the speech went over an hour, an epic version of the fact-challenged, meandering and, even for his detractors, mesmerizing speeches he gave during his upstart presidential campaign. Mr. Trump gave few details about his plan for the solar panels, beyond that it creates energy and pays for itself, or about his coming proposal to greatly curtail welfare for new immigrants, including how it would differ from existing laws that do just that. He called it a total rewrite of our immigration system into a merit-based system, words consistent with the public tone he has struck on immigration restrictions. The president, whose approval rating is mired below 40%, told the crowd of roughly 6,000 people at the U.S. Cellular Center that he was thrilled to be out of the Washington swamp. He barely reacted to whistle-blowing protesters who interrupted him within the first 5 minutes of the speech, when he was honoring Representative Steve Scalise, the Republican House Whip, who was shot during a baseball practice last week and now faces a long rehabilitation. "Never fails," Mr. Trump said as the protesters were let out. Free from his handlers for roughly 70 minutes, Mr. Trump described his administration as he wished it to be, one in which he had made historic governing accomplishments and been stymied solely by the resistance. "I think healthcare is going to happen, and infrastructure is going to happen, and I look forward to being able to produce it," he said. He derided trade deals despite an Iowa economy that relies in part on exports. He denounced the $6 trillion spent and the lives lost in the Middle East over the last 15 years, despite his administration's decision to reauthorize troops in Afghanistan. He toggled back and forth between telling farm-rich Iowa that he had fought for forgotten voters and lauding the wealth of Gary D. Cohn, his top economic advisor and a former executive at Goldman Sachs, the Wall Street giant that Mr. Trump derided in commercials in 2016. "In those particular positions, I just don't want a poor person. Does that make sense?" he said of Mr. Cohn's job and that of Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, another immensely wealthy man whom Mr. Trump lauded as a legendary Wall Street genius. "Brilliant business minds are what the economy needs," he said. And the president frequently embellished details during his speech, or told outright falsehoods. He tried to catch himself at one point, saying, "I have to be a little careful, because they'll say, he lied." But he nonetheless plowed ahead, including misstating whether the Paris Climate Agreement, from which he plans to withdraw the United States, is binding. While doing so, he also prompted the audience to name the agreement themselves. P, he said. "Like hell it's non-binding," thundered Mr. Trump, who in fact called the accord non-binding in his Rose Garden speech announcing the withdrawal this month. "We're not even campaigning, and look at this crowd," he said at another point. The rally was advertised, sponsored and organized by his campaign committee. He also repeated his frequent